So many people think that their relationship problems are a product of poor communication. And I get it, because I thought this once too, but it's not true. Poor communication is rarely the problem in your relationship. What most people overlook is that the real problem is actually a lack of emotional maturity. Communication doesn't break down when people lack words. It breaks down when people lack emotional capacity for what is being said. So if every conversation turns into an argument, if you walk away from conversations feeling misunderstood or unheard, if conflict never seems to get resolved, it's rarely about learning how to phrase things better or about finding the perfect response. It's about whether the people in the relationship can regulate themselves and tolerate the discomfort and take responsibility for their inner world. So today I want to talk about emotional immaturity, what it looks like in relationships, and why it almost always shows up in relationships as poor communication. Now, before we talk about communication, we need to clearly define what emotional maturity actually is, because it is often misunderstood. So from a psychological perspective, emotional maturity is not about being calm all the time, or being agreeable in every situation, or having control or influence over others. Emotional maturity refers to a person's capacity to recognize, to regulate, and to take responsibility for their internal emotional experience, while also still remaining relationally connected to other people, especially under stress. So emotional maturity requires 4 core abilities. The ability to differentiate feelings from behaviors so that emotions inform our actions rather than control them. The ability to tolerate emotional discomfort without becoming reactive, avoidant, or defensive. The ability to take responsibility for our own internal world rather than externalizing our emotions onto other people. And the ability to remain open, reflective, and accountable in moments of conflict and feedback. So, in other words, emotionally mature people can still experience strong emotions. The difference is that they don't lose access to their self-awareness, their empathy for other people, or choice while they are experiencing those strong emotions. The beauty is that they can hold both. This is how I feel, and I am responsible for how I respond to those feelings. This capacity develops over time through emotional attunement, modeling, reflection, and repair, not through intelligence or with age or because of good intentions. And when emotional maturity is underdeveloped, it doesn't just affect how someone feels, it directly affects how they communicate with other people, how they handle conflict, and whether relationships are going to feel safe or unpredictable. This is where communication usually begins to fall apart. So when people say that they have a communication problem in their relationship, what they're often experiencing is the relational impact of emotional immaturity. So here's the key idea I want you to hold on to today. Poor communication is not the problem. It is the symptom. Emotional immaturity is what makes communication collapse under pressure. And when you understand this, a lot of the confusion in your relationships starts to make sense. Today, I am going to cover 5 signs that you're dealing with emotional immaturity and not actually communication. So let's jump in. The first sign of emotional immaturity is difficulty regulating your emotions. This often shows up as overreacting to small issues, shutting down completely, or exploding and saying things that you later regret. In these moments, the nervous system is in a state of survival mode, So there is zero capacity for curiosity, for nuance, or for connection to exist. And here's the truth. You cannot communicate clearly when your nervous system feels threatened. Emotionally immature people don't speak about their emotions. They speak from them. And this difference matters tremendously because that's when communication turns reactive and chaotic or just pure silence. Now, the second sign of emotional immaturity is chronic defensiveness. Everything feels personal. Everything feels like an attack. Feedback becomes criticism and requests feel like control. Conversations become self-protective rather than moments of connection and understanding. So when someone is emotionally immature, they're not listening to understand. They're listening purely to defend themselves. And the moment defensiveness enters the room in a relationship, communication stops being a dialogue and becomes a battlefield. So if conversations feel like you're in a courtroom, odds are emotional maturity has not developed yet. Now, the third sign of emotional immaturity is externalizing our responsibility. Emotionally immature people struggle to take ownership of their inner experience. So instead of saying, I feel hurt and I need reassurance right now, they say, you made me feel this way. And this shifts the responsibility outward. When responsibility is externalized, communication becomes a platform for blame and criticism. Here's the difference emotional maturity makes. An emotionally mature person would say, this is what I feel and this is what I need. Emotionally immature people say, this is what you did wrong. Only one of those can ever lead to repair. The fourth sign of emotional immaturity is poor emotional vocabulary. So many people aren't emotionally immature because they're malicious. They're emotionally immature because they are emotionally illiterate. They literally don't know how to name what they feel. So emotions get acted out instead of spoken. So instead of honestly speaking about your emotional experience, they react intensely. And instead of speaking clearly about what it is you need in any given situation, all you get is confusion. If you can't name it, you can't communicate it. When emotional language is limited, misunderstandings are bound to multiply. And relationships are going to suffer because the people around you start to feel unsafe in your presence. Now, the last and fifth sign of emotional immaturity is avoiding discomfort and repair. Emotional immaturity avoids the emotional labor attached to it. This looks like avoiding hard conversations, withdrawing after conflict, or offering apologies that never seem to lead to change. And without repair, issues don't resolve themselves, they just recycle, leading to more resentment and distrust. So let me say this clearly so there's no confusion. Emotional maturity isn't about never hurting someone. It's about knowing how to sincerely repair when you do. This is why communication tools alone can't fix relationships. You can learn the scripts, you can learn I statements, you can learn all of the tips and tricks in the book, but if emotional regulation and accountability and self-awareness aren't there, communication collapses the moment something gets uncomfortable. Communication doesn't fail due to a lack of words or knowledge on how to say something perfectly. It fails due to a lack of ability to hold the emotions you experience during difficult conversations. Now, if this resonates with you, whether you're in a relationship with someone who lacks emotional maturity Or maybe you can identify some of these traits in yourself. Stop searching for more ways to communicate more effectively, and instead try to identify what emotional skills haven't been developed yet. Emotional maturity is learned. It's developed through awareness and integration and practice. And when emotional maturity grows, good communication is a natural byproduct. Good communication is not forced. It flows naturally when emotional maturity is present in your relationships. The emotional capacity you build inside yourself is what shapes every relationship in your life. Because the truth is that every relationship hinges on the one you have with yourself. Now, if you want to explore this work more deeply, and by deeply, I mean not surface level tips, but the inner foundation required for real connection, that's the work that lights me up. So check out my website at michellemendoza.com. Michelle is spelled with one L if you want to learn more.